Welcome to Master the Game. I am Juce, and today I am met with Matt and Marty Forbeck. They've been working on a Kickstarter that they're excited to come on and plug, and I'm excited to give them that platform to do so. We're going to also help them promote it throughout this next couple weeks as well, because I'm a big fan of Matt's work over the years, which is quite extensive, by the way. But before I jump into it, I'm going to show you guys their Kickstarter, which the link is in the description. You can go check that out. Also, you can go check out Matt's website if you want to see some of the previous things he has worked on over at forbeck.com. But here is the Shotguns and Sorcery Kickstarter. It is launching tomorrow, I believe. And you can go and get in on that. This is for 5e. They've already got it for Cypher System. So if you play Monty Cook games, you can go and enjoy that already. But yes, this is going to be for 5e. Matt Forbeck's site over here, you can see everything he has worked on. It's quite an impressive list of titles. And again, I'm always a big fan of what he's done, and I've had the privilege of meeting him at conventions before. He's a frequent goer, and he's always open to having discussions about gaming, world building, and many other really cool things. So with that, let's kick it on over to them. Let them introduce themselves. Let's start with you, Marty.
Kiddo.
Okay. Hi, I'm Marty Forbeck. I'm the son of this guy on the right, or is it right or left? I'm not
It's
sure.
your left.
They mirror it, so you got to figure this stuff out. Come on, you'll get it.
I wrote the fifth edition. I wrote the rules for the 5th edition source book, which is in this upcoming Kickstarter, the center of this upcoming Kickstarter. And yeah.
What else have you worked on before this?
Not a lot. I'm fresh out of college. Well, not fresh. But I'm still wet behind the ears. I got out of college a year and a half ago, middle of the pandemic.
Nice.
I finished college just like 2 months into it.
Gotcha.
And, most of my time since then, I've been working on this or other little bits and pieces of stuff.
Nice. And which college did you go to?
I went to UW.
Most have been doing Shotguns and Sorcery stuff up until now, though. Tiger, you should mention that to them. So.
Yeah.
You're doing some great work. Be proud.
Is that not what I said?
You're humble.
You said little bits here and there, you know.
He's very humble.
Yeah.
I've been doing Shotguns and Sorcery stuff.
Yeah.
Excellent. Awesome. Matt, tell us about yourself for anyone out there who doesn't know who you are.
And also, I interrupted you. Marty went to UW-Madison, just graduated from there in 2019. So we're very proud of him. He got out in 3 years, which was great because he saved us all a boatload of money. So, and as game designers, you know, that's important stuff, guys.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
I'm Matt Forbeck. I've been working in the video, in tabletop video game novels and all sorts of other stuff for over 30 years now, ever since I got out of college in 89. So I guess that makes it 32 years, if my math is correct. Marty always corrects me because I'm terrible at this nowadays. Your brain atrophies pretty quickly.
Yeah, you're getting senile.
It is. It's terrifying. And then we have my dogs barking in the background, but there we go. Somebody killing them. Good. That's good to know. I started out doing tabletop game design. I was working with Will Niebling and Associates as a sales associate he was the first vice president of TSR way back in the day, and he hired me when I was in college to go do this stuff. I started doing all sorts of conventions and seminars and things like that. And over the years, I got into doing freelance writing and game design. I worked for Games Workshop, for TSR, for all sorts of different other places freelance. I started a company called Pinnacle Entertainment Group, which did Deadlands and Brave New World, and now does Savage Worlds and all sorts of other great stuff. More recently, after I started having kids, he is the first of them. I started moving back to freelancing, and I've been mostly writing novels. I got something like 35 novels written, including things for things like Dungeons and Dragons, Blood Bowl, Halo, Minecraft Dungeons, Life is Strange, a bunch of other stuff. I wrote a couple of editions of Marvel. What's that?
35 is a low estimate.
It probably is. I quit counting. I keep forgetting to go back. So,
yeah.
And I've got some over a couple hundred different gaming credits too. But most recently, I've been working in video games. I've got the last thing I had that came out was called Biomutant, that came out in the spring, which was a pretty fun PC and PS4 and Xbox game. I'm currently working on Warhammer 40,000 Tacticus, which is a
Nice.
Mobile game for Snowprint Studios. The guys do Riven Guard, was their original game. And also working on another video game I can't tell you about, and the Marvel tabletop role-playing game. Which is coming out from Marvel Comics the playtest book is coming out in the spring of next year.
Yeah, and you can get that on Amazon for like $10, I think.
Yeah, that's the retail price, actually. It's going to be, supposedly it's, I don't know, release dates on Amazon are kind of like the biggest part of fiction, the most fictional part of fiction, right? But it's currently slated for release on March 29th, 2022. It's 104 pages, $10, $9.99. And it'll have everything you need to start playing. It's not going to be a complete game, but it'll have a good chunk of it, because what we want to do is get that portion of the game out there for people to test it out and tell us what they think about it, so that we can then, there's no way to test something as really complex as a role-playing game, especially something that does superhero powers. It's very hard to do with a small group of people, but if we can do it in the market and have all the fans out there help us, then we can make it a much better game than we otherwise could. At least that's the theory. Let's hope it pans out. So
I think that's great. I'm looking forward to that for sure. I've been telling my wife about that. So yeah,
I just gotta finish it.
So yeah, I remember, gosh, I want to say it was like 2 years ago or something. There was a cryptic post on Facebook you had about, should I or should I not get back into tabletop RPGs? So what was it that made you jump into that?
That was actually me. Well, there's a couple things. Marty was actually part of this, because I was like, what do you want to do? And he's like, I'd like to do some of this stuff. I thought that was kind of cool. So it kind of encouraged me to go back into it.
Thank you, Marty.
And I had never really abandoned tabletop games. I kind of did a little bit here and there. Like I wrote a chapter of Tales from the Loop. I wrote, a little bit. I wrote the Endless Quest books for Dungeons and Dragons, a little bits here and there. And then what was happening then was that the original Shotguns and Sorcery role-playing game was published by Outland Entertainment, and they had decided to do it with the Cypher system, which was great. I love the system. I love the guys behind it. It's a neat game. But they had run the Kickstarter for it in 2015, and then because of all sorts of various reasons, I'll let them go into it if they want to at some point. The game didn't actually ship until 2020, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, the license was expiring. And although I was really pleased with the job they did, I thought they did a great job. I thought the artwork was amazing, the print job, everything else, the rules, it all really held together very well. We had Rob Schwalb doing the rules for us. He was a fantastic designer. The problem was that they still had a bunch of the stretch goals to deliver at that point. And I'm like, Jeremy Muller was not only the cover artist of the game, who does beautiful work, but also the publisher of the company and the owner of the company. I said, Jeremy, do you really want this right now? Or would you rather, I'll help you get this across the goal line. I'll have Marty help me with some of the writing. You'll finish the artwork, and I'll just publish it from here. You don't have to worry about this anymore. Because, after 5 years of finally getting something done, maybe you want some help from somebody to kick it across, and then I'll just take over publishing. And that's what we did. We had a heart to heart where, both of us were like, what do you really want to each other? And it came out that Jeremy has got lots of wonderful projects coming out from Outland. He's got novels and fiction anthologies and comic books and other games. And, if you didn't have to have this, it was one less thing you had to worry about, right?
Yeah.
And because it it was my property to begin with, I felt pretty good about taking it over. I wasn't legally obligated to take it over and do a lot of this stuff. But, of course, when it's your fans and your property, you feel morally and ethically obligated to make sure they get everything that they want, that they paid for, so that you can do other stuff with in the future. And honestly, we're starting a Kickstarter for a 5th edition version tomorrow. And tonight, literally, I stopped doing this just before I got on the line with you guys. Tonight, we're going to deliver the last thing for the previous Kickstarter. Right? Perfect. It's an art book. It's an art book. I finished it up yesterday. Marty was actually proofreading it today. We got all the things in. I'm putting up an RPG, drive-through RPG, which is what we deliver through. And we'll put up for sale at some point in the future. But right now, we want to make sure the backers get it. Yeah. And after I'm done talking here, I'm going to go over to drive-through RPG and, file those email addresses there, push the big red button, and let them all go out. And the Kickstarter will be done amazingly. So
that'll be a relief.
It's like, you want to have this great chance to have this big sigh of relief. You're like, whew. And then tomorrow we start all over again, right?
And do it all over. Hopefully not 5 years later, though.
No, and that's actually the best thing about this, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to bring Marty on, because I'm really, between things like the Marvel game and a couple of video games we're working on other projects, I don't have the time to spend on a lot of this stuff to give it the love that it really deserves. But Marty does, and I'm like, if you're interested in doing this, let's get you started. So he actually has been writing the 5e stuff for months. I mean, he started last year, really. Yeah. And he's done with the 5e conversion. It actually looks fantastic. And the only thing we're missing for text for the book is when I lay it out, and I'm going to do the layout because I started out doing that when I was in college and I still like playing around with it. I'm going to write little fiction snippets to lead off every chapter, which we didn't have in the original role-playing game. And then that's it. So the text is 95 to 99% done.
Nice.
And for the artwork, we probably have, once we get the layout done, we'll know, but we probably have about 4 more pages of artwork that we're going to commission, and a brand new cover, which I knew I had this back here for a reason. So there's a cover there.
That's the screen.
That's the screen that I printed up for Gamehole Con.
Nice.
I'm going back the wrong way. I teased Marty about doing this. There we go. So anyhow, we have the cover artwork for it already done. And that means, again, the artwork is 95% done, right? So we should be able to deliver this by the end of the year, very shortly thereafter. The real trick at that point is going to be printing it, right? Because
paper shortage. And...
paper shortages and printers. If you're shipping overseas, which most people tend to do, you're looking at months and months and months, possibly horribly delays. But I actually found a really good printer in Tennessee, believe it or not. I think it's giving me a better price than I'm getting out of China right now, especially considering delivery charges. Strangely, it's Jostens, right? The yearbook printer, right?
Oh, interesting.
Prints like half the yearbooks in the country. They actually, this is a company that does short run, full color, hardcover, quality books that are meant to last a lifetime. And that means they're perfect for role-playing games.
Have you guys committed to what kind of binding and everything you're going to do with them? Whether it's types of stitching, you're not going to just glue it in there, right?
No. We're planning to do 2 of them. No, that's actually part of it, because I was a print geek when I was running Pinnacle Entertainment Group. So
perfect.
One of the things I wanted to make sure is that we're going to do 2 versions of the book. They're both going to be hardcover. Nice. The basic book, I think, is going to be $60, and it's going to have a 256 pages full color. And it's going to have a Smythe sewn binding, as they say, with a hardcover, which is the best you can really get without having monks actually sit there and hand stitch everything. And we're going to do the same thing for the deluxe version, except for that, we're going to go with a leatherette cover with a gold foil stamp. Perfect. And assuming we break some stretch goals, we'll do things like ribbons and gilt edges, and maybe we'll get a dragon scale pattern on the, embossed into it and things like that. So
that sounds
pretty excited about it, and we're trying to limit the stretch goals to things that are doable, like at that level, as opposed to, and now we got to lock Marty in a room for 6 months and have him make more books for us.
Write 4 more books.
Get to work, man.
There's anything wrong. I think you do a great job. Right?
Why are you not writing right now, Marty?
Laziness.
Who told you to be on this thing? Wait, that's me. Shit. Okay. No, but I think, Marty and I had a great time this weekend. We ran Shotguns and Sorcery at Gamehole Con. He did a great job. I had people come up to me later on saying, your son, it's just really amazing. You just really fantastic job at it.
That's awesome.
He's very hard on himself. He's like, Dad, I don't know about this. And,
I can tell.
You're embarrassing me.
He's too humble.
He's very humble, right? He's a good kid.
That's a good trait.
Better than I deserve. But part of it is that, Marty has gone to a lot of, I know you have played with game masters much worse than either one of us at different convention cider, because I've been there with you when we've walked out of them. So
but we don't talk about that.
We don't talk about that. That's all in the past.
Time to forget.
The dark and secret past.
So Marty, if I could real quick, your process for coming up for rules for this, because obviously you had stuff to base it off of from Cypher and things like that you also had a hand in. What was your process for coming up with the rules written for 5e exactly?
It was in a large part, it was looking at other 5e setting source books, just reading them over and then seeing what I could steal.
Hey, the best people take something and they improve upon it. So completely fine.
We call that riffing. Okay.
Right.
Nothing stolen directly, but
sure.
There's a lot of good 5e stuff out there nowadays, and
Right. And thanks to the OGL, you're not required to reinvent the wheel, but you want to put your own stamp on it, right?
Yeah.
Were you trying to make it feel the way it did for, say, the other game systems it's already been written for, or were you trying to do something completely different and just fill a hole within 5e?
I was trying to make well, the thing about it is the original novels and the game, the Cypher System game and the original novels are not too far off from 5e to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's urban fantasy. It's the text a little bit more sophisticated.
Yeah.
But it's all still, orcs and dwarves and goblins and whatnot.
Sure.
So moving up from there is not too difficult. It's just making these settings mesh together. That was the hard part. Shotguns and Sorcery as a setting is it's heavily based around like the undead. It's heavily based around like this one giant dragon. It's heavily based around like race and class and stuff. Like there's a lot of very like nitty gritty like details stuff. As far as like high level mechanical stuff, I mean, it's 5e. It's all still 5e.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, originally when I came up with this setting was something I came up with for third edition, way back in like 2000 when they were doing the world search which turned out to be for Eberron.
Yep.
Right. Keith Baker one that was a good buddy of mine too, and I ended up writing a trilogy of Eberron novels for it too. So I was excited about that. But I came up with I actually sold it to Mongoose Publishing, and they were going to publish it. They were going to license it for me. I was going to write the books. And then my wife got pregnant with Marty's little siblings, were quadruplets, right, all at once, and that put that on the shelf for a while. So the idea that bringing Shotguns and Sorcery back to Dungeons and Dragons is kind of like bringing it home, right?
Yeah, it's come full circle.
It really has in a lot of ways, right? And ironically, when I was coming up with this stuff, Marty was like 2 and 3, and here he is now writing it. So I'm an old man. I guess to appreciate these things. It's very cool.
When you were coming up with the idea for it back then, what was it that inspired it? What were you going for?
To me, it was like taking my two favorite genres and writers, essentially, which were J.R.R. Tolkien and Raymond Chandler, right? I was a big fan of hard-boiled detective fiction and of high fantasy. In fact, one of the projects I was working on around the time the quads were born, I was the lead developer for the Lord of the Rings role-playing game for Decipher back when they were doing that, right? So I had a lot of this stuff in my head, but I'd always been like the hardcore noir stuff. Cyberpunk I was a big fan of too. And there's some of that sensibility in Shotguns and Sorcery, even though it's more like what would happen if you mixed smog with that kind of stuff, right? With that kind of street sensibility, not the tech obviously, but the street sensibility and Cyberpunk really leans heavily on kind of noirish things as well. Same in Blade Runner and things like that. So I was kind of looking for that kind of an attitude, but mixing it with high fantasy. And that's not something I'd seen a whole lot before, right? Some people have done some good stuff with that since then. I mean, Alex Bledsoe's got a great series of hard-boiled detective fantasy novels, which are really set in a much more medieval setting than what this is. What I also want to do is take like Minas Tirith, which is one of the big cities in Tolkien, and then say, what would happen if you had 500 years of pressure on this, and how would they evolve magic at a low level to be something that was permeating the entire structure and integrated throughout culture and society at that point. So that's how we end up with Dragon City, which is the setting for the game and for the stories.
Oh, cool. What can you tell us about the Dragon City exactly?
All right, Dragon City, the whole premise is basically what would happen if a zombie apocalypse hit the Lonely Mountain, right? There's a character called the Ruler of the Dead, who's this powerful necromancer who basically unleashes a zombie horde upon the world, kills everybody, right? Just slaughters all the free people stand up against it. They get slaughtered. But some people manage to escape. As they're retreating ahead of it, they retreat to the mountain and they come to the dragon. They say, Dragon, if you would be so kind as to help us, destroy the undead. And he says, well, I'll tell you what, I'll destroy the undead for you. I'll just keep them off you until you manage to build a wall around here. And then you can live inside the wall. That'll be Dragon City, and I will be your ruler. I will be the Dragon Emperor, and this is how we will live, right? And there are other dark secrets that go along with this horribly corrupt and evil deal that they made under duress, which come out in the stories and the novels and such as well. But in the meantime, it's in the setting, it's 500 years later. Only the elves remember what actually happened 500 years ago. Everybody else has had to live with it since then. And society is stratified on the mountain by geographic altitude, essentially, right? So the dragon lives at the top of the mountain at the Dragon Spire. Then there's the Elven Reaches where the elves live, and then the stronghold just below that where the dwarves live, plus inside the mountain. Then Gnome Town and the Burrow, and below that there's the largest part of the city, which is the village, which is where all the humans live. And then down just below the wall, known as the Great Circle, that's where the goblins and orcs and kobolds and ogres and all the quote unquote evil races live. They now live in Goblin Town, stuck down by the wall, where they can actually hear the zombies moaning and clawing at the stone every night as sunset falls, right? So you have that little element of horror out there that might creep in at any minute. You got people walking down mean streets who are trying to resist themselves becoming mean. And there's magic that just permeates it all. So there's, instead of street lights, you have glow globes that come on when the lights go down. And if you want to, there's not a whole lot of streets and traffic, but if you want to hail a taxi, stick up your hand and a flying carpet swoops down from the air and, negotiates a rate with you and where you want to go.
Nice.
So all sorts of good fun stuff like that.
What kind of tech can they expect in here? Obviously a flying magic carpet. What kind of things are in this that maybe aren't in, 5th edition D&D?
Well, one of the main things beyond that, and Marty might be able to speak to this some too, is that it's, there's lots of great little magic items, some of which were from the Cypher system, some of which were from the stories, and some we just came up with whole cloth. But the gunplay rules are really good that Marty managed to pull off. There's a lot of weaponry. There literally are shotguns, rifles, pistols, and stuff like that. Most of the stuff is generally at a 1920 level, right? Tech level. So for things like that, but those shotguns and such then can be enchanted. So you can, the shells can be enchanted. So if you want to fire a lightning bolt, you can enchant a shell and slap it in there and then fire it off at somebody, right? Or if you want to do a fireball or a ray of cold or whatever. If you want to reload the weapon, you can just take it and tap it against the ground and boom, it's suddenly reloaded again with standard ammunition instead of all the other stuff. So and there's machine guns for high level stuff and off to the edge. And in the novels, there's actually a guy who basically has a tank on top of a flying carpet with a machine gun attached to the top of it. It gets really crazy toward the end, right?
I love it though. It's like a great B-level movie.
Yeah, exactly. That's really what I was going for. I'm like, I'm going to lean into this screwiness of this and have some fun with it. And also this kind of things that players can mess around with too and have a lot of fun with. It's necromancy is terribly outlawed. If you lose a body, they have all sorts of great body destruction rituals, right? So it's mostly take them and get them incinerated. Mm-hmm. If you're one of the most powerful people like the elves and you lose a body, you're in trouble. The Dragon Emperor demands his pound of flesh, or his entire corpse in this case. So if you lose the body, he's going to take somebody else from your family instead. It gets very drastic. Whereas down in Goblin Town, they don't know how many people are there. They go missing occasionally. Things happen. It's that kind of a place.
Marty, is there anything you want to elaborate on that? Maybe some of your favorite tech that you've written into the book or anything like that?
Well, a lot of the tech in this book is actually it's been mechanically redone, but it's repurposed from the novels and from the original role-playing game. Check out over here on my shelf. There's one thing you didn't mention was glow globes. Yeah. Which, this is an industrial level. Since it's 1920s, it's in an early industrial level city. They got industrial level lighting with magical lanterns, essentially, that you can tap them and toggle them. They light up the streets at night. Glow globes, which I didn't realize until a few months ago. Is glow globes a Dune reference?
It might be. I don't know. I haven't read Dune in 30 years.
Pretty sure they have glow globes in Dune, and I think you slipped that in there.
It's entirely possible, right?
Yeah.
We're not supposed to say that on stream. Now they're going to come.
Well, influences are influences, right? Something like that. But it's not like Frank Herbert's estate's got a trademark on glow globes of all things.
Right.
And I actually know the guys. I don't know Brian Herbert, but Kevin Anderson I know pretty well. He's a good guy. He writes a lot of the sequels with Brian. And we're waiting for Marty to come down this, I guess, hopefully next weekend, so we can all go see the movie together.
Oh, that's cool. I haven't seen it yet either.
And my father took me to go see the movie when I was like 16 or whatever the hell it was when it came out. And we drove down to Chicago to go see it. And we went to a movie theater in Schaumburg, Illinois, the Woodfield Mall, which was the biggest theater in the area, big screens, all that kind of stuff. And they handed us a 2-page glossary as we walked in.
Oh,
because
cool.
the movie producers were afraid that we would not understand anything without a glossary. I'm not sure how we were supposed to read it in the middle of the film.
Yeah, I was say. Maybe if you're standing in line for it or something.
Yeah, exactly. On the way in, they're like, "Here, take this." I'm like, "Are you?"
That's cool.
And we had both read the book, so we knew it was coming. It still was crazy, right?
Yeah.
And, it's I love a lot of David Lynch's work. That's not my favorite of his work, but there was a lot of fun things in it anyway.
That's awesome.
I'm really looking forward to seeing the new one too.
So, what made you guys decide to bring it to 5e?
Well, it just seemed like a natural thing, right? One was Marty was looking for something to do. And two was I suddenly had this book and all this artwork that I owned, right? And I'm like, are we going to keep doing Cypher system stuff? And honestly, as much as I love the Cypher system and all the people buying it, after 5 years of developing it, the bloom had gone off the rose.
Yeah.
Right. It was kind of time for us to do our own thing and put our own stamp on it and start fresh, which is one of the reasons, again, that we wanted to finish that Kickstarter before we started the new one. But all that, and honestly, 5e Dungeons and Dragons is one of my favorite games, and the fact I now have the absolute right to, like anybody else, to go off and play with it, do your own thing with it. That's kind of a difficult lure to avoid, right?
Yeah.
It drags you in.
I honestly love 5e. It's one of my favorite games to run. So
it's amazing, right? I don't generally have a campaign in the house because, like a lot of game designers, I'm a guy who picks things apart. I play it, I figure out how it works, and I move on to the next thing, right? Whether it's a board game or card game or role-playing game. But we play it at conventions all the time, and we always enjoy it. It's just a lot of fun. There's a lot of really innovative stuff going on in there. And as I'm working on the Marvel superheroes game right now, I look at 5e a lot just because it's the most popular game out there, and you want to see how it goes and what's happening with it. But it is just kind of stunningly well done, right?
Yes.
Just so many good things going on there and so many different advances they've done.
It's easy to pick up. Like, I feel like when I bought it, I felt like I knew the system like within days. Like, I was like, oh, I got this down. Now, there's mistakes I still made, but I thought I was an expert. Like, it was that nice of a system, I thought.
I think that was the big selling point. And 4E, 4th edition was a great game, too. It really was. It hit its design parameters real well. If it had been anything other than Dungeons and Dragons, I think people would just loved it and be going, this is better than D&D, right? But when you played 4th edition, it didn't feel like any of the D&D before that. It felt like a whole new game, right? And 5th edition, when you pick it up, you're like, oh shit, I know how this all works, right? If you played any of the other editions, including 4th, or all the way back to White Box, you play this, you're like, I get it. I see how it all fits together here. And this is felt like a natural evolution. Really,
they definitely took a lot of elements, it felt like, from every single version they've ever done. And so everyone could relate to this system when they first tried it, I feel like.
And honestly, that was one of the inspirations for us doing the playtest book for the Marvel game, because they had done that for Pathfinder. They did it for 5th edition. The idea that you're going to put that out there and see what people like and get some feedback on it before you go to press, and make sure you're giving people what they want. I mean, ideally, when you're doing any product, you're trying to make sure people get what they want, but especially with something that's, art essentially here, right? That you're giving people the tools to create their own art and their own stories. You want it to be something they're actually comfortable using and excited about. So, letting them peel the curtain away and look at that and see how it works, and then help you develop it. Just everybody seems like they're really involved in it then. I mean, D&D is still doing Unearthed Arcana stuff to this day, right? Like every month or two, we're coming out with new stuff. I think that's a brilliant way to do it, just to make sure. Otherwise, you print stuff out, it's like you're handing the tablets down from the mountain, and it's like, take this. This is how it is, suckers.
Right.
Whereas you could say, hey, we got this great idea. What do you think? And you say, oh, okay, you're right. Maybe we should do it this way. This is what we all came up with. Isn't this great? I think that's a great way to pull it off.
For sure. So not to put the cart before the horse, but now that you are working on the 5e one, is there a chance with like new programs like Green Ronin now has, and Pathfinder, that we might see this adapted to those systems as well moving forward?
Well, actually, that's something Marty worked on before he did the 5e thing, which is one of the reasons it gave me so much confidence to give him the 5e bid. But he did the Pathfinder conversion, which was a stretch goal for the original Cypher system.
Oh, nice.
Right? And unfortunately, because in 2015, it was going to be, this was before second edition Pathfinder was really a twinkle in anybody's eye. So we're like, okay, we're going to produce this, but it's really first edition Pathfinder. And but that's pretty close to third edition Dungeons and Dragons, which meant that for Marty to take that and then move on to this was a very natural progression, right? But yeah, I mean, if somebody comes up and says, we want to do, Fantasy Age or Fate or whatever. We actually have a friend who's seriously pinging me saying, I want to do a GURPS version. And I'm like, well,
interesting.
That's not my first choice. I played GURPS when I was a lot younger, but he's still a huge GURPS geek. And I'm like, well, if you could talk to Steve Jackson Games and get them on board and you want to write it, I'm sure we can figure it out. That's one of the great things about Kickstarter is you get to run up the flagpole and see if anybody's willing to slap money down on it, or salute it, as they say. But it's that's what I love about Kickstarter. Like, this whole Kickstarter we're going to do might fail, right?
Yeah.
I'd much rather it failed before I dropped $25,000 or whatever the hell it's going to be on a printing bill, tried to shove it through distribution, didn't know for a year or two, and just went through this long, agonizing death. If it's going to fail, I'd rather have it fail and we're going to do a 3-week Kickstarter. So they'll fail in 3 weeks and I'll be able to, go and cry into my turkey during Thanksgiving as opposed to having to worry about this.
Well, hopefully it doesn't fail.
No, I mean, I don't think it will, right? But if it
exists now.
Yeah. But, that's part of having done this with Pinnacle and having done a lot of other publishing work with companies over the years. You see the successes as well as the failures, and you should be prepared for both, right?
Yep.
So I think it's going to succeed. We've done a lot of work in it. I think it's a great product. I think Marty's done some fantastic stuff here. We're doing some marketing. We're pairing with BackerKit on the marketing, and I think it's going to do pretty damn well. I have high hopes for it, but I'm also prepared for it to crash and fail. And if it does, I know what happens then.
Right. Yep.
And in the old days, if something crashed and failed, if you were starting a company, you probably mortgaged your house or you tapped your parents' retirement fund. And then again, Thanksgiving was miserable because you weren't welcome anymore. This is a much better way to go around it, right? You put some money into the art and the writing, and then, if you still have that, you lost that, but you're not out for the printing bill and the shipping bill and all the other good stuff that goes along with it.
Right. Well, considering most of the work is done, if the worst thing happens and it doesn't fund, would we still possibly see the rules put out in a PDF or something?
Oh, for sure. It's not like we're going to sit on this and just say, well, screw you people. You didn't appreciate our genius. You hurt my son's feelings. No, we're not going to go there. No, I mean, this will come out, but honestly, I can't imagine we're going to fail. We're only putting a $10,000 goal on it.
Nice.
And I have a lot of confidence we'll be able to get it go. To me, the real question is how far will it go, right?
Sure.
And actually, I'm still struggling with this. I'm trying to figure out about stretch goals right now because I don't want to add in stretch goals or things like, and you get another book and another book and another book. And then, you don't end up delivering everything for another 3 years because everything takes so long to produce and none of those things have actually been put in the channel yet. And, I don't want to get into that. So in that sense, sure, we might not, crack $1 million on this or anything, but at least I know that we're going to be confident we can deliver on everything we promise.
So what is the Kickstarter money hoping to cover? Obviously the printing bill.
Right. And then we're going to Tahiti, So.
I mean, that's fine. I'm on board.
We want to make money at it. I'm not trying to be coy about it. It's going to help pay for my kids' college. I got 3 or 4 kids going to college right now.
Cost of manufacturing.
To pay Marty for his writing, right?
You still owe me money.
I still owe you money on this, right? Exactly. We're going to pay off all the writing. You're first in line, kid, I promise. And then you can come home for Thanksgiving too.
Yeah, I better be. Otherwise, you're not welcome in my Thanksgiving.
Don't threaten me with a good time, kid.
Show him who's boss.
He will, believe me. The trick is that a lot of it's going to go into marketing. You have to pay for ads.
Sure.
Some of it's going to go into Kickstarter. Kickstarter takes about 5%. The credit card companies take about 5%. Marketing takes a good chunk. Then we have to do printing and fulfillment, right, which is big other costs.
Yep.
We have a little bit of money we have to pay for artwork still. And then there's all sorts of incidentals that come in. But, when I specifically did not put up one of these pie graphs that says this is where every dime goes to, right?
Sure.
Because,
I don't think you need to. I think sometimes it's just nice to having an idea of what, what is done and where the money goes.
We need the money to print it, essentially. If, I'm not willing to just cough up all this money and try to, I'm not going to put this book in the distribution system, right? Sure. I'm not going to sell it through distribution, through stores and whatever. If I'm actually hoping to put a retailer level on the Kickstarter tonight, because I was talking with a friend of mine in Madison, Brian Winter, who runs I'm Board Games, which is a fantastic little store. Brian was one of my college roommates. And he's like, yeah, you can put on one of these, these retail levels. They work really great. And we'll ship them to the retailers who buy it, right? Mm-hmm. But my experience with doing distribution when I was running Pinnacle was distributors generally only paid you for what they bought when you had something else coming along. Right. And it was just like this ritualized extortion going on.
And the idea is that you want them to sell it to stores, but are they really selling extra copies to stores and things like that?
Right. And, and they take 10%, right? Yep. The store gets 50% off, the distributor gets 10% off. And again, I have a lot of friends who are distributors and I like them and I trust them and I believe in them, right? Yeah. But this is a 5th edition, third-party source book that's not being done by Critical Role, right? Yeah. Or the massive media license. So how many stores are really going to take this? I'm not trying to fool myself into thinking that everybody's suddenly going to bow down and say, oh my God, it's the best thing ever in sliced bread. We're going to sell a moderate amount of these. We're going to sell as many as we can direct to the consumers. Yep. For one, we make more money that way and we make better books that way. But for two, again, I just don't think there's a huge market out there for this kind of stuff. I walk into a lot of stores and a lot of times all you ever see is like, here's the Dungeons and Dragons, here's Pathfinder. If you're lucky, there's maybe Fate or,
Call of Cthulhu.
Or Cthulhu, right? Yeah. But there's not a whole lot of other stuff. So I don't really, at my age, want to crack my head against that. If I'm going to crack my head against it, I'm going to find something I think is the next biggest thing, and I'm going to beat the hell out of that instead. But doing a 5th edition source book is not that next biggest thing, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully people will buy it and we'll do well with it. But I do this for a living. This is not a hobby for me. I've been doing full-time game design and creating for 32 years, often for other people, but also for myself. What does some of the money do? It goes into my bank account so I can feed my kids and we can send them to college and all that kind of stuff. Because, we work just like everybody else. Game designers are not all, it's not like, Fifi, could you answer the phone on the yacht so I can actually get this order from the distributor?
I was going to say, you don't go into tabletop RPG game design to get rich. Like that's
exactly.
That's not something you do. If you're doing that, you're either got a really awesome idea that we haven't seen yet, or, you're just crazy.
No, nobody does it, right? Even Gygax and Arneson didn't do that. They went into it thinking they had some fun. And it blew up, right? But the two old jokes are always, how do you make a large fortune in the adventure gaming industry?
You got it backwards.
How do you make a large fortune? How do you make a small fortune? You're right. How do you make a small fortune in the adventure gaming industry, Marty?
Start out with a large one.
There you go.
Yep.
Hey, Marty, what's the difference between a game designer and a pizza?
One can feed a family of 4.
Right.
I love it. So, I think I've heard Ed Greenwood say that before.
Yeah, they're the classics, right? And they're only painful because they're absolutely true. So, but it's because it's such a rarity. I mean, Robin Laws is probably, I think, the guy who came up with this originally, but he used to say that there are more astronauts in the world than there are full-time game designers, full-time freelance.
That's true. That's true. That's crazy. I didn't. I never even really thought about that.
Right. So you think about how rare of a profession that is, right?
Yeah.
And those guys have entire governments behind them usually, or some kind of billionaire. And the other thing he would point out is that there are more Chinese astronauts than there are full-time role-playing game freelancers, right?
Wow.
And of course, China's got a great sports program, but they're not the first ones you think of. So it's.
So speaking of the Kickstarter and stretch goals, have you partnered with any companies that are doing anything special as stretch goals for this?
No, again, if you want to buy something from Wormwood, go buy something from Wormwood. If you want to buy dice, go to Chessex or whoever to get your dice. We can do that, but again, it complicates things. What I want to do is make a good book that people can buy, that I can ship to them as cheaply as I can. As soon as I start tossing in things besides a book into the envelope, it goes away from being media mail to a package. Right?
Sure.
And that means the shipping price doubles, if not quadruples at that point.
Right.
Especially if you're talking about overseas shipping. It gets really expensive very quickly. We're actually partnering with Atlas Games to do the fulfillment. John Nephew up there and Michelle are fantastic friends of mine. And, I trust them to do a great job. They do a great job with every one of the Kickstarters they do, and actually just with their own shipping in general. And also John is one of the sharpest guys I know and watches every damn penny. So if there's a way for him to ship it to somebody cheaper, he'll do it, right?
Nice.
And we pay him a flat fee for the fulfillment. Everybody then pays the shipping fee on top of that. We suck up the fulfillment fee as part of the game, as part of the book cost, right? I think it's like $250 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then we're going to charge shipping separately through BackerKit when everything's done at the end. And that way we don't have to say, no, you can't order that book. We have to say, no, you can order whatever you want. You just got to pay for it to get to you, right? So if you're in Uzbekistan or Colombia or wherever, it's actually very hard to send stuff to Brazil for some reason. If you're one of these countries that has a hard time, there's the new VAT going through the VAT tax with Europe nowadays. That is very difficult to navigate. We're going to say we're not going to pull that off, right? Mm-hmm. It's not worth our time for the 10 books we might sell into Monaco to be able to figure out what their tax rate is. But if you're from Monaco and you want to buy it, go right ahead. You just got to pay the charges when it gets to that point.
Right.
So we're very accommodating. We want to get you a book. If you don't want to pay all that stuff, buy the PDF. Right? PDF will ship anywhere in the world for free. We use these little things called electrons. They're amazing. You should
So this Kickstarter is funding a single book?
Yes, this is one book. We think it's 256 pages. That's actually probably the minimum, right? Okay. So it might be as we lay it out that it gets a little bit bigger. We haven't actually done layout on it. That's where our current guess. And honestly, if Marty or even one of our backers comes up with a great idea and says, what about this? We might make that a stretch goal to add a certain number of pages to it, right? Mm-hmm. For various things. We could add, but I really would like to keep it into the main book and not make it very much. Yeah. Because if we have to write another 100 pages for the book, that means you probably got to wait another 6 months to get it, right? At least 3 minimum, but probably 6. By the time we get in the text, edit it, get the artwork, get it all laid out again and all that kind of stuff. I want people to have this book by next summer at the absolute latest, even if I have to carry it to their houses. And things like that only cause delays. Right?
How much extra is it for you to carry it to our house?
We can negotiate. Right? It all gets charged in BackerKit, so it's whatever it says in backer.
Right. Nice. So what can they expect inside this book from cover to cover?
Oh, we should have a table of contents. I don't have one right now. Marty, tell them what's in the book.
Well, not a table of contents.
We have a rough table of contents. At least we did.
I don't have it in front of me is what I'm saying.
Yeah, we definitely don't have it in front of us. Well, I mean, it's...
I should post that for tomorrow, actually. That's a great idea.
You should what?
I should come up with it and post it for the Kickstarter.
A picture would be great.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
I'm writing myself a note right now. See, these are great things. I love doing these little streams and conversations. Yeah. Come with better ideas all the time.
Yeah. We got a list of bullet points up on the Kickstarter of kind of what's in there, but we don't have a full table of contents.
Right. But I mean, you're going to get the neat thing about it is you're going to get all the stuff that was in the Cypher system game, plus all the stuff that was in the supplements for the Cypher system game. Yeah. That was a bigger book. That was like, 300 some pages? I forget how many it was. But the neat trick about it is that because in the 5e version, we don't have to include the rules system. You are going to be using your D&D books. There's more room for us to fit things into it, right? So we could fit in the few dozen extra monsters we came up with for the mobsters. What was those? Monsters and Mean Streets, right?
Yes.
So I'm looking at it here. It says full color artwork throughout, overview map of Dragon City, brand new Shotguns and Sorcery fiction vignettes. That's the Monsters and Mean Streets right there, Marty's got. Entirely revamped racial system, including 16 playable races, featuring 2 entirely new races. Somebody's probably done in 50, but these are our versions for mermen and beastmen. A brand new character class called the Freelancer, right, Martin?
Yes.
Okay. Plus rules to make standard 5e classes fully compatible with the setting. 14 new character backgrounds, new cults as new organizations within Dragon City, guidelines for handling religion within the setting. The system's kind of atheistic, the setting is, right? So it's like, oh, what do you do with clerics? How do those work here? And all that kind of stuff. So
Okay.
every single magic item, monster, and NPC from the original Shotguns and Sorcery RPG and the Monsters of Mean Street supplement converted to 5e, plus the ones that you found in the Mobsters and Miners adventure that Marty wrote for the game as well. There's going to be revamped gunplay rules, including at least a dozen new guns and weapons, loads of campaign hooks, all sorts of different ways. In fact, brand new ways that Marty had come up with for like different parts of the setting. Like if you wander up to here, maybe this is what's going to happen. Additional detail on the geography and history of the Dragon City setting that's never been seen before, and a 5e version of the original Adventure Miners and Monsters that we did. So.
Nice. That's a good rundown.
It is a good rundown. I actually did a bullet point thing. So I was thinking about
it. We thought about this. We just didn't put a table of contents up.
Exactly.
I have the whole original line just sitting here right next to me.
There you go. Nice. All the fancy stuff, huh?
How many books are in the original line?
3, I think, depending on how you count them. I don't have the little Pathfinder conversion kit that we did.
Right. Gotcha. So there's the main book, the monster book, the adventure, the Pathfinder conversion. There's also a player's source book that we did, or player's book, that is essentially like the first 140 pages of the main rule book.
Yeah.
Which contains all the rules, but not any of the settings. So if you just wanted your players to be able to play the game and not actually see the setting, you can go with that. Yeah, that's not going to happen here because, obviously you want them. The setting is what you're buying. Yeah. So.
The main book looks like this, and
it's nice and thick.
Yeah, it is.
The final book that we put out will probably look a lot like this too.
Yeah, although with the brand new cover that Jeremy did, which again is this pretty looking. Let's see, that's the back of it. It's kind of funny because it's these guys fighting these zombies, and it's in full color, and it's almost like all the colors of the rainbow coming at you. Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah.
Anyhow.
So we do have some comments from people.
Okay.
We have.
Wait, people are listening? Shit.
Oh, yeah. We had a late surge of people. So Raid NMD says, love Matt, wrote my fave series, Marked for Death. Even have the mark tattooed on my leg.
Seriously?
Have you seen that?
He did what?
He has the mark tattooed on his leg.
Oh, very cool.
So it sounds like you haven't seen it. So Raid NMD, you need to tag Master the Game on Twitter, and I will tweet it at Matt, or tweet it at Matt and tag me because I want to see this too.
That'd be awesome.
There's actually a little. Do you want to talk about the connection between this and Eberron?
Well, I did talk about how I came up with it for the original Eberron setting search at one point. If that's what you mean.
You didn't mention that. You talk about how you came up with it, but you didn't talk about the contest.
Oh, yeah. Well, I did talk about the contest just very quickly. But
the 3rd edition contest.
I've heard this a dozen times, so you may have, just tuned your father out. That might just be a choice.
Well, I wasn't listening. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, watchers, commentators.
So then we had
not even a teenager anymore, a 20-ager.
So we have also from Raid NMD. What is Matt and Marty's favorite thing about the book? Monster, item, class, etc. We'll start with you, Marty. Or actually, let's start with you, Matt. Let's start with you this time.
My favorite bit is my son's writing. It's so sweet. No, Marty's laughing over there. Let's see. I was actually just looking at the monsters today. Some of the monsters that Marty came up with for the original Cypher system, which are going to show up in the book, are just freaking awesome, right? There's the Swampy, which is this swamp gas zombie, right, that comes out and attacks you out of nowhere. There's all sorts of wacky creatures in there that are just kind of fun. Floating eyeballs and all sorts of stuff that'll cause you nightmares in the long run. Yeah. The funny part, I think, is that it leans; those things lean more into the horror aspect of it, which a lot of the game is just kind of this in the setting of the story is just kind of this thing off on the edges that influences things, and it's a pressure cooker. You don't really have it in your heart, right? And then Marty's like, "Well, let's creep the shit out of everybody with this." So he did a great job with it.
Yeah, I do love some of those monsters in that book. I was probably going to go with a monster too if I had to pick one thing. I was going to say the dearly departed, the super powerful deer with 2 zombies on its antlers.
Oh no! Like just a regular deer with zombies on its antlers?
Well, it's very muscly.
it's like 500 years of deer fighting zombies, right? And so they've kind of evolved in magic. They're eating out there and all these things are infused in magic. So they've kind of evolved to be really goddamn tough with these really sharp antlers. So they go around and hit zombies, and then the zombies they use as like the guys strapped to the cars in Mad Max to actually go after.
They got entire humans, dead humans on their antlers that they wave around to fend off predators.
Oh, that's wild. I like that, actually. That's pretty cool. Bree K says, what other projects is Marty planning to do in the future?
That's a good question, Tiger.
That is a good question.
And obviously, if you aren't allowed to talk about it, don't mention it. I don't want to get you in trouble.
I don't have much of anything going on right now. I'm working on this, and
are you open for freelance gigs too?
Yeah, I'm open for anything. Hit me up.
There you go, guys. If you need help, I can help you get into contact or reach out to Matt, and they can get you that. Or do they have an email that they can reach you at?
Yeah. You can hit me up at marty@forbeck.com.
My whole family has Forbeck.com things, including my brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Perfect. So it's marty@forbeck.com?
Marty@forbeck.com. You can try DMing me on Twitter, but I probably won't get back to you.
He doesn't want to work that bad. No, I'm just kidding.
A kid studied, mass communications in college, and it was mostly for film video.
Yeah. I went into communications, and then I decided to never use any social media for the rest of my life.
That's not necessarily a bad idea. I mean,
no, it's actually
you probably learned everything you needed to know.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if I want to be a content creator, I have to use those things. So
yeah, exactly. So I do all that stuff for the marketing and stuff here. But actually, one thing we talked about with Marty that I might end up doing for me in the future is I got the rights back to Brave New World, which is the superhero dystopian role-playing game I did back in 1999. And I'm going to probably need some help with that. So
I love superhero games.
Another Kickstarter we're going to do in the future.
Superheroes were my first tabletop RPG. I played Heroes Unlimited. Actually, was my very first game. So a very soft spot in my heart for all superhero games.
Exactly. I'd be working on that right now, except I'm working on the Marvel game, and honestly trying to do 2 superhero games at once would break my brain in half, and I wasn't ready for that.
Nice. And when that gets closer to coming out, I would love to have you back on to talk about that too.
Oh, that'd be a blast. Definitely.
So with that, we are over our time. We are after 9. If there's any questions you guys have in the chat real quick, feel free to post them now. With that, I'm going to let you guys, if there's anything you feel like you've missed or want to say about the Kickstarter, please get it in. So again, we'll start with you, Matt.
I have the pitch that we worked on all weekend when we were doing Gamehole.com, which is if you want to we want you to back this. We want you to back it early if you can. The quicker people back it, the faster it actually funds, the more momentum it gains, the better it'll probably do. This is what research has shown. So if you go to shotgunsandsorcery.com and put in your email address, tomorrow at noon Central Time, when I push the big green button that says launch this mother, you'll get an email that says we just launched this mother. And then if you back within the first 48 hours, because again, backer gets like, you need to get them something for, joining in. Like, well, I always hate as a backer if you miss like the first special thing and then it's just, you're like, oh, I got ripped off, whatever. So for this, we wanted to come up with something that was fun, but not something that you would feel like you got a hand dipped in your pocket for it. So if you back the standard book in the first 48 hours, Marty and I are actually going to go drive up to Duluth, Minnesota, where they're going to be stored with Atlas and sign those copies. Okay.
Nice.
And then if you back at the deluxe level, which we were already going to sign, we'll actually take those and number those as well and try to number them in the order that they come in. Right.
Oh, cool.
So, if we get 200 orders in the first 48 hours, that's 200 numbered copies. You'll get one of those. If we get 1,000 orders, I don't think we'll get 1,000 orders for that, but whatever we get, right?
You'll have to have an assistant actually opening the book and sliding it over to you at some point.
Exactly. We'll have to bring up one of Marty's siblings to help us out. Right. Pat's up in Menominee. We'll probably stop and grab Pat up at UW Stout in Menominee on the way up through. Say, Pat, you're coming with us to schlep books all day. So.
That's awesome. If you guys aren't familiar with Matt, which I don't know how you aren't, Matt has written a ton of quality books, so I can guarantee you this will be a quality product. And Marty, obviously being the son of Matt, of course, is going to make sure it's a quality product too. So, only quality coming out of the Forbeck.com domain. With that, Marty, was there anything you wanted to add about the Kickstarter or the book in general?
I think it's all right.
All right.
Christ, this is the thing. I've been doing this for like 30 years. So somebody asks me a question like, blah, blah, and Marty's like, hey, buy it. Right. What do we care?
I have no problem turning the camera on and talking myself, so I get it.
Oh, that was great.
So Bree K does say, what was the hardest project Matt has ever worked on?
Oh, Jesus. The ones that never came out, right? Those are always hard. What's the hardest one? Oh, that's a good question. Oh, there's a couple of them. You probably wouldn't know, right? One of them was I did an installation at the Milwaukee Public Museum in the streets of Old Milwaukee, which is this massive thing they do that's from like the turn of the last century, where they actually recreate the entire, or a good chunk of downtown, like downtown street at like 75% size, right? Inside the building. And I got hired on to do a interactive audio app that would allow you to do interactive stories in there. And it would actually figure out what your decisions were. Like, it was like a choose your own adventure thing. But the way you made a decision was by walking to either the left or the right. Like, if you want to do this, walk over here. If you want to do this, walk over there. And there was a Bluetooth beacon that would actually pick up on your Bluetooth in your phone and figure out which way you had gone, and then would give you the next series of questions. That was a really strange one. Another one I did is I actually did a project for Playmates Toys way back when I was doing toy design. And I probably shouldn't, no, actually, I think it was revealed that I worked on, they had a Viva Pinata license at one point. And I was working on a toy that was going to connect their toys with the video game, with everything else. And I'm not a programmer, but I had done a lot of coding in college. I mean, I did 2 years of engineering and computer science in college. So I actually flowcharted out the entire damn thing so that somebody in China could actually program it in assembly code and make it all work. And I remember when the guys at Playmates actually called me up to check it out and make sure it all worked. They printed the entire flowchart out, and it took up an entire wall of their office from one side to the other.
Oh, wow.
And they went through it with me one step at a time to make sure it all happened. And that was it was like 8 hours of going through, like, and if you go here, must have been somebody at the highlighter figuring out which way it went.
Right. Or like the detective stuff with the pins and string. And
yeah, exactly. Like Charlie Day going, hey, look, and then. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, but yeah, it was ridiculously complicated. Actually, the other one I did was I was the main writer for Biomutant, which came out in the spring. It's a video game. And
that game looks cool, by the way. Like when you had announced that and I was checking that out, I was like, oh, this would be so cool for my kids, but they're so obsessed with Minecraft. I was like, I'll just hold off for now.
Well, for that, I have a Minecraft Dungeons novel.
I know you do. Yeah.
But with that one, the guy who was in charge of the game, Stefan Lundquist, had this really radical idea. One of the reasons when you do stuff in a game, you want it to sound different every time somebody comes up and talks to a character. So if you talk to them 20 times, you don't get the same thing every time because it drives you nuts, right? And it throws you out of the game. It throws you out of the verisimilitude, and you're like, that doesn't make any sense. So sometimes, originally it was like you just got one thing that somebody would say. And then later on, we're like, well, let's write 20 things for them to say. And that'll change things up a bit. But Stefan had this crazy idea where he's going to have a dialogue system where every time you ask somebody something, there would be a prefix, a main part, and a suffix. And then there would be like 10 or 20 of these, and it would randomly choose from among them and make a sentence, right? And writing for that's a big freaking challenge, let me tell you.
I was going to say, that sounds difficult.
And it took me a while to finally get the hang of it. I finally did. I got it all working, and I was like, this is going to be great. And then he was like, and we're fully voicing it. And I'm like, because it's one thing to, link that text together. It's another thing to make the voice for the actor actually work by just reading it once for each one of those lines and then mixing it together. And to make the actor go through and read every one of those, if it's a 10 by 10 by 10 matrix, it's, there's 1,000 different combinations. And who the hell wants to do that to some poor actor? He'll be there for days. So we ended up doing more traditional, where we just we scrapped and went back to doing something where it was like, here's 20 different variations of the line, and go with that. And the actor still had to read those, but at least it wasn't 1,000. Right?
Yeah, I was gonna say it'd be hard because like trying to mix and match, you're gonna get different tones and pitches. It's gonna
exactly.
Be really
that was
difficult.
really the kicker. I mean, it's hard enough when you got somebody like Google or Waze doing that, even with something as simple as a mapping system where there's a limited number of options, right? To make that sound realistic. But imagine trying to do that with the hundreds of types of conversations you have in a role-playing game.
Right.
In an open world role-playing game, and it was just impossible. It quickly became clear that this was not going to work, and we had to scrap it and do something else. It's a great idea for something that's text-based. And if and when I ever do a text-based game with Stefan, I might swipe that with him, or we'll figure it out.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, because it was really a neat thing to do. But for a fully voiced game like that, it was really
Yeah.
it was not within our realm to be able to solve that problem. Let's put it that way.
Maybe you guys have to make a phone app game that's text based.
Yeah, exactly. Or you could do
maybe it's Biomutant phone app or something.
There you go. A visual novel, right? One of these things instead of being fully voiced, and see how it goes. It would work for that, right?
For sure. So with that, that is all the questions that we have. But you guys can head on over there tomorrow. Do you know what time that's going live?
Yeah, I'm planning to kick it off at noon Central Time, Central American Time.
So noon Central Time tomorrow. You guys can head on over there and back this. And if you have any further questions, you can either just ask them online, especially if you've already backed it. You can ask your questions in the comments on Kickstarter. I'm sure they would appreciate the support. And with that, we are going to end it there. However, I do want to quickly mention on November 8th, I will be interviewing Mark Tassin about his homebrew world, where he's also done a 5e product called A Tultus. That is his own fantasy setting. Multiple books. Very, very cool. I do have the PDFs. I have the physical books coming soon, and I just want to quickly mention that. So we'll be meeting with him on November 8th. And then on November 15th, we're going to meet with Sean Robertson. He's the creative director and partner of Palladium Books. He also still works for Pinnacle. He is the lead on the Savage Rifts Revised Edition, and we will be talking to him on November 15th. So that'll be Monday nights, same time, same bat channel, 8 till 9 p.m. Eastern. We hope to see you guys there. Once again, guys, thank you for your time, and good luck on your Kickstarter.
Hey, thanks so much for having us. It's been a blast.
Thank you. And this was Master of the Game. I am Juice. Game on.